Story 1. This is a story I haven't thought about in years, and for good reason. When I was younger, my friends and I liked exploring abandoned places. Growing up in New Jersey, there were enough empty warehouses and forgotten buildings within driving distance to keep us busy for hours. Most of the time, it wasn't anything special, just decaying classrooms, empty gyms, peeling paint, but every now and then, we stumbled across something that gave you that pit in your stomach feeling. The kind that makes you want to turn around and never look back. One spot had been on our radar for months. An old, abandoned middle school about a 20-minute drive from where we lived. We had seen pictures online and figured it was finally time to check it out. That summer night, boredom had taken over, and the four of us, me, Yuri, Frank, and Freddie, decided to go. Frank and I brought a few cans of black and white spray paint, and I threw in some leftover Roman candles from the 4th of July. Our plan was simple: explore, tag a few walls, maybe shoot off the fireworks on the roof, then leave before anyone noticed. Yuri drove that night. When we got close, the fence surrounding the school had been cut, so we didn't even have to climb. The building was bigger than we expected, and we immediately split into our roles. Frank led the way through the hole, followed by Yuri, then me, with Freddie bringing up the rear. The inside was dead silent. Picture your childhood school, only stripped bare and hollowed out. Wires hung from the ceiling, insulation drooped like cobwebs, and broken furniture littered the floors. We wandered hallways and classrooms, my flashlight sweeping over graffiti and peeling paint. Frank and I paused occasionally to check the tags on the walls, but mostly we kept moving. The basement was by far the worst: crumbling tiles, dark corners, and a pentagram painted across the floor. Nothing too unusual for urban explorers, but it gave the room an immediate sense of menace. We didn't linger. On the second floor, we found a blank white wall that was begging for paint. Frank and I started our piece, while Yuri and Freddie wandered off toward a stairwell they thought led to the roof. After a few minutes, I heard Frank shout. He accused me of taking his bag, but I had been standing in the hallway the whole time. Freddie had a reputation for messing with us, so we assumed he was behind it. We searched, found nothing, and eventually gave up, deciding to look for our friends. That's when I found another pentagram, fresh paint dripping down the wall, and in the corner, Frank's missing bag. The room felt different, heavier. Even Frank paused before grabbing his bag, muttering under his breath. I didn't respond. Something about it crossed the line, and I wanted nothing more than to get out. We wandered down a hallway, trying to catch up with Yuri and Freddie, when we heard footsteps fast, pounding, echoing through the dark hallways. Freddie and Yuri appeared, motioning for us to follow, and we ran. Adrenaline took over. There were people in the building, chasing us, and their presence made every hallway, every corner, a potential trap. The building, which had seemed big and empty before, now felt like a labyrinth designed to keep us inside. We stopped to catch our breath in a corner of what felt like an entirely new wing. Whispered theories bounced between us. Who were these people? And why were they after us? Freddie explained that they had been downstairs, cloaked figures huddled in a circle, playing some strange game with stones or marbles. As soon as the figures saw him, they bolted, and Freddie and Yuri had to scramble upstairs to avoid them. That explained some things, but not all. There were at least 4 of them, and they had been toying with us. Leaving Frank's bag in a pentagram room, as if to confuse or scare us further. We eventually found a stairwell, descended, and reached what we assumed was the ground floor. Relief was brief. A sharp hissing noise echoed from somewhere ahead. It was steady, deliberate, like a warning. We froze, hearts pounding, waiting for what would come next. Then, from the darkness, a deep voice said, "I should have cut you when I had the chance." That was it. That was the final push. We ran. Every step, every echo of our footsteps made it clear that they were still behind us. Shouts, curses, the sound of boots on the floor. It was overwhelming. Somehow, Yuri navigated the chaos, and we burst through the original entrance into the night. We scrambled through the fence, jumped into his car, and drove away, adrenaline still surging. We didn't look back. Even now, thinking about it, I can't imagine what would have happened if we'd hesitated, if we'd split up, if we'd stayed inside a second longer. That school is still out there, standing abandoned. I've never been back, and I never will. What we saw and experienced didn't feel like anything supernatural. It felt human, calculating, dangerous. The things that hide in old buildings aren't ghosts or monsters. Sometimes they're just people, waiting, watching, and testing whether you're clever enough, fast enough, or lucky enough to get out alive. Every time I pass an abandoned building, my pulse quickens. I check the corners, the shadows, the doors. I've learned that fear isn't just something you feel in the dark. It's the awareness that people can be far closer, far more prepared than you ever imagine. That night, we ran, we survived, and we never forgot what chased us. And I never want to see anything like that again. Story 2. This happened a little over a year ago, and I haven't really talked about it much mostly, because thinking about it still makes my stomach twist. I had just moved into my first house, leaving behind a cramped apartment downtown Spokane. That apartment had its perks: central location, easy access to everything. But after years of listening to neighbors through thin walls, dodging traffic, and feeling like I was never truly alone, I was done. I wanted quiet. I wanted space. The house I found was small, simple, tucked behind a stretch of pine trees on the outskirts of a rural town. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, a cramped bathroom. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, it was peaceful. The nearest neighbors were far enough away that I couldn't hear them, couldn't see them without deliberately leaving the house. Life was quiet, almost too quiet. Between my new job and the exhaustion from commuting, my days were routine but lonely. Most nights, I lived off takeout. Social life? Non-existent. I didn't mind. That night, late October, I had just returned from work around 7:30. It had been one of those days where your mind feels like it's been hammered for hours, leaving you raw and fragile. I kicked off my boots, changed into comfortable clothes, and placed an order from a small Chinese restaurant that serviced my area. Delivery options were limited out here, so I had to stick with the ones willing to drive out to me. A little after 8, the doorbell rang. Fast, I thought, impressed for a delivery. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. A man stood there, hoodie up, jeans on, hands in pockets. No bag, no receipt. Nothing to indicate he was delivering food. My first thought was confusion. My second, unease. Against my better judgment, I cracked the door, leaving the chain on. Food delivery? I asked. He paused, then nodded, muttering something about needing to double-check the order in his car. My gut slammed the brakes on my hazy judgment. I told him firmly that if he didn't step back, I'd call the police. He muttered under his breath, turned, and walked down the driveway. I watched him until he disappeared into the dark, the unease curling in my chest like smoke. I called the restaurant. The food hadn't even left. It clicked in a rush of horror. This stranger hadn't been delivering anything. He had been there for another reason. I called the non-emergency police line and recorded it. They advised me to stay alert and noted it in the patrol logs. That should have been enough, and in all likelihood, the man had left. Minutes later, the real delivery driver arrived, and I took the food, still shaking. I settled into the living room, lights off, letting the quiet settle around me. Then I heard it. Faint at first, almost dismissible, a scraping sound from the back of the house. I froze. Silence followed for a few seconds, then it came again. Closer, deliberate. My eyes went to the back door. The knob moved, slightly. Someone was testing it. My heart slammed. I quietly called 911 again, grabbed a kitchen knife, and locked myself in my room. I stayed as quiet as I could, waiting. Minutes later, officers announced themselves at the front door. Relief was immediate and palpable. The police searched the house and surrounding area. No one was there, but fresh pry marks on the back door confirmed my fears. Someone had been trying to get in. A flathead or pocket tool had been used to manipulate the lock. They logged the incident and promised increased patrols, but that was all. I slept fitfully, haunted by every creak of the house, every whisper of wind through the trees. The next few nights passed without incident. I convinced myself the man wouldn't return after being noticed twice and having police contact, but that feeling, the gnawing, simmering fear, never left. Then, a few nights later, I was woken by sirens. Not too close, but loud enough to jerk me from sleep. I went to the window just in time to see 3 cruisers speed past. I felt relief mixed with curiosity, assuming it was a domestic issue or unrelated emergency. Minutes later, I was jolted awake again, knocking at the front door this time. I shuffled to it, still groggy, and looked through the peephole. 2 uniformed officers were standing there. One held up a phone, showing me a photo. It was him. The stranger from a few nights ago, the one who had tried to manipulate my lock. He had been caught attempting a break-in a few streets over. The officers confirmed they were taking him into custody and that I wouldn't have to worry about him anymore. Relief washed over me in waves, so strong, I almost laughed through the tension. That was the last I ever heard about him. They never followed up. I never inquired, I just let it go. Even after that, living there became unbearable. The isolation, the stillness that once felt peaceful, now felt oppressive. Every gust of wind, every branch scratching the windows, reminded me of the night someone had been testing my locks. Eventually, I moved. The house, the pine trees, the quiet streets, all of it, became a memory I'd rather forget. What still lingers isn't the threat itself, or the intruder's face. It's the fragility of safety. How easy it is for someone to cross that line, for a stranger to test the walls of your sanctuary while you sit helpless inside. The thought that it could have ended differently if I had answered the door fully, if I hadn't called the police, is still there. A ghost in the back of my mind. Every time I drive past that neighborhood, I glance at that gravel driveway, at the stillness behind the pines. I think about how quickly normalcy can be fractured, and how quickly life can go from ordinary to a memory you relive in your mind, over and over. And that's why, even now, years later, I remember that night so vividly. Because for a brief moment, the world wasn't just quiet, it was dangerous, and it was closer than I ever wanted it to be.
Story 3. It happened just a few weeks ago, and I still can't stop thinking about it. My name's Catherine. I'm a 24-year-old law student, heading into my second year at NYU. If you've ever been through your first year of law school, you know, it's brutal. I averaged maybe 4 hours of sleep a night for 9 straight months. So when summer finally rolled around, I promised myself one thing. I was going to live a little. Go out, see my old friends, pretend I didn't have a mountain of case studies waiting for me in September. That summer, I was back home, mostly to save on rent, but also because I missed the familiarity of it all. The same streets, the same faces, the same quiet little comfort that comes with being home. Most weekends, my best friend Jackie and I hit up the same handful of bars a few towns over. One in particular, always packed, always loud, and always full of the kind of people who made the night unpredictable. That's where I was the night everything went down. Now, I'll admit something a little embarrassing. I have this habit. When I meet guys at bars, I kind of play dumb. Not too much, just enough to let them think they're the smart ones. I don't even know why I do it. Maybe because it's funny watching them underestimate me. But that night, it almost cost me everything. Jackie and I had just gotten our drinks when 2 guys approached us. Sebastian and Luke. They seemed normal, friendly, confident, not immediately creepy. That's a good sign, right? Jackie clicked with Luke almost instantly, so I figured I'd chat with Sebastian. He was charming, the kind of guy who seemed comfortable anywhere. We talked longer than I expected. Usually, these conversations last 10 minutes tops before someone gets bored or sloppy. But this one kept going. It actually felt natural, for a while. Eventually, Jackie leaned in and whispered that she needed to use the bathroom. As we walked away, Sebastian offered to get us new drinks. I told him we'd both have a rum and coke. Something simple, something safe. In the bathroom, Jackie admitted she was thinking about going home with Luke. I was surprised. That was usually my kind of bad idea, not hers. But she seemed into it, and I wasn't about to kill her vibe. When we came back, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. The guys weren't joking or laughing like before. They were standing still, quiet, whispering to each other, their faces blank. The moment they saw us, though, they snapped right back into their casual, confident selves. Luke slid 2 drinks toward us, our rum and cokes, but there were also 2 other drinks on the table. Bright yellow, slushy-looking things that definitely didn't seem like anything a guy would order. I tilted my head, smiling playfully. "What are these?" I asked. Sebastian smirked. "Pina coladas." I laughed lightly and said, "You know, I think these might be a little too girly for you guys. I'd hate for anyone to catch you drinking them." Then I did something impulsive. I swapped the drinks. I slid the rum and cokes toward them, and handed the pina coladas to Jackie and me. Sebastian stared at me, really stared, like he was trying to decide if I'd just ruined his plan or if he was overthinking it. Then he smirked again and said, "Tuche." He took a long sip of the rum and coke. Luke followed. For a moment, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was all in my head. We talked a little longer, and soon Luke suggested we all go back to his place for a nightcap. Jackie looked thrilled. I didn't argue. We Ubered to his apartment, a small second-floor unit in a quiet complex. Inside, it was cleaner than I expected, but oddly bare. Minimal furniture. No photos. No decor. Like he just moved in, or didn't plan on staying long. He pulled a few White Claw from the fridge and played some music through his TV. For a while, it was normal, but that changed fast. Within 10 minutes, the guys started to slur their words. Their faces went red. Their laughter turned slow and disoriented. It was like they'd aged 50 years in 5 minutes. Then, they both slumped over. Out cold. Just like that. Jackie panicked, shaking Luke, trying to wake him. I stopped her, told her to sit down, and reminded her of the drink swap. And I'll never forget the look on her face. That dawning horror when she realized what could have happened. We sat there in stunned silence, our hearts racing, as the sound of the TV filled the room. These men had meant to drug us, and ended up drugging themselves. Jackie wanted to look for evidence, but there was nothing obvious to find. What would we even do? Call the police and admit we'd gone home with strangers? Accuse them of something we couldn't prove? Eventually, I convinced her to leave. We slipped out quietly, still shaking, hearts pounding, not saying a word the whole Uber ride home. We didn't report it. Not that night. Not ever. Maybe that was a mistake. But honestly, I just wanted to forget it happened. And yet, I can't. Because the scariest part wasn't what did happen. It's what almost did. If I hadn't made that stupid joke, if I hadn't switched the drinks, if they hadn't underestimated me because of the way I acted, we wouldn't have walked out of that apartment. What still haunts me is the question why. Why drug girls who were already willing to go home with you? What were they planning to do next? Maybe they thought the drugs wouldn't affect them because they were bigger. Maybe it was arrogance. Maybe it was something much darker. I'll never know. But I do know this. I'll never leave my drink unattended again. I'll never play dumb for laughs again. And I'll never forget the sight of those two men slumped over, unconscious, while the reality of what could have happened played over and over in my head. Some people think horror stories come from dark places or haunted houses. But sometimes, the real horror walks right up to you in a crowded bar, smiles, and buys you a drink.